Hey everybody, this is a video for some records that I've gotten over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Um, it's a real eclectic mix of stuff. I mean, I don't think you get more different from album to album on this. This actually is going to be everything from sort of current indie rock stuff to old school metal, which I don't even think I've even done anything with the metal in it yet. So the first one's actually one of my few new bands on vinyl that I have. So this is Field Music. This album's called Measure. It's actually a double LP. And I think I came across, I had heard their name for a few years, but I think I came across them on iTunes whenever I was just surfing around, and I think it was one of the selections that other people bought from whatever I was looking at, and I checked them out and just fell in love with it right away. I guess you would say it's recommended for people who like so-called sort of smart pop music. They're often compared to XTC, and that's a just comparison. But from what I can tell on this record, where XTC would kind of mix in things like Caribbean feel and all kinds of different things, this is a little bit more of a straight rock feel, but it still kind of has that XTC sound a little bit. Even a slight progressive rock almost feel to it. So that's pretty interesting, because they definitely are. If you listen to them, and they sound like modern indie rock band, but there are moments where they kind of mess with time signatures and stuff, and it definitely has these subtle hints of progressive rock. So if that at all sounds interesting to you, I'd check it out. Next we have a much older release, and this is a really rare psych record from the 60s. It's called Grapefruit, and I guess the title's around grapefruit. I think they may have only had 2 records, and I have another one, which I presume is the only other one. And that one is completely different than this record. This is the one that people that know about this group, generally speaking, prefer. While the second one, which I think came out in about 70 or 71, was more of, kind of a forgettable, I don't know whether to say average or not, but it's sort of a run-of-the-mill, straight-up rock, early 70s rock, with a little bit of a heavier tinge to the guitar. This one is from, I think, 68, and it has just a really nice psych feel to it. It's pretty indicative of the psych sound of 68. And this actually has elements that I like in the psych music that I like, which is some orchestral kind of arrangements as well, interspersed with some of the songs. And one thing to note, Grapefruit was actually one of those bands that was championed by the Beatles, and that worked out, I guess, for some. But I think that these guys actually charted with 1 or 2 songs, but other than that, they didn't really sell that well, as far as I know. But they actually got their name Grapefruit. It was apparently suggested by John Lennon. It was inspired by, surprise, surprise, Yoko Ono, who had a book titled by the same name. And I don't know anything else about the book, but I'm going to guess it probably has to do with the art world. Next, complete 180. We got Judas Priest here, Sin After Sin. This is from about 77. I was never into Judas Priest when I was in my 80s metal heyday. I don't know why, but I just wasn't. And I'm starting to like them a little bit more now, much later, 20, 25 years on. This is definitely really early Priest, and I gave it a spin, just one spin, and I like it. Another Judas Priest, the classic Priest album, British Steel. And this one's obviously, if you like metal, you're probably familiar with this record. It's cool. Another 180. I guess that puts us back to where we were, but this is jazz. You got Gil Evans, Svengali, I'm really curious about Gil Evans. I have his one of his other records that came out. I think it was his first one for Impulse, called "Out of the Cool," which was a reference to the his work with Miles Davis, "The Birth of the Cool." And what I like about him is that he's sort of more of an arranger. You know, of course, he's a jazz artist, but he's an arranger. So, you know, his stuff isn't that sort of standard 4-piece or 5-piece jazz where you have those structures where you open with a sort of melodic piece and then you have 3 soloists and then go back into the melodic piece that starts with it. There's a lot of movements and just sort of more interesting kind of feels to his songs. You know, sort of along the lines of like a Charles Mingus or a Duke Ellington, people who sort of, you know, it was more than just sort of improvising. There was a lot of arrangements to the songs. Next, again, totally in a different direction, Fishbone, Truth and Soul. I love this record. I used to listen to this all the time in college, and I wouldn't say that I'm really into. Well, these guys don't really fit that, but the sort of ska revival, they inspired a lot of those bands that were kind of hot in the '90s, and these guys are just so much better than that kind of stuff. I'm not really into those, and to me, I don't know what I'm not familiar with by them. I don't know any of their newer stuff. I'm kind of familiar with their late '80s stuff and the early '90s, but from what I know from them, this is just their best to me. This was actually one. It's very rare that it was on Sub Pop, and it was an artist that I liked back in the '90s. And you don't see it very often on eBay. When you do, it's really expensive. But I happen to get it at a very reasonable price. It's Eric Matthews' second record, "Lateness of the Hour." He's known to be, you know, sort of indie pop, and he's very influenced by the Burt Bacharach school with, you know, again, arrangements. Where he uses orchestration and stuff. And this one's actually, the second one is a little bit more rock oriented, while he does use string arrangements and that sort of thing on here. This one's actually a little more guitar driven than the first one. The first one actually had a song that actually charted. It's funny to think about it these days, but well, I don't know if it charted actually. It got a decent amount of airplay, so it must have charted, you know, on some level. It was off of Fanfare, and actually I think it was the title track. Next one here, we've got one I've seen online for a long time and have been sort of curious about it because I like Brian Eno. And I don't even know if this is really, there's a project name to this, 801 Live, and it's just got the guys' names, Phil Manzanera and Eno, and I have to plead ignorance to the other guys. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that they have their own stories, but those are the only 2 guys I know. They actually do a version of, this is all live, of course, because of the title, but they do a live version of Babies on Fire, which is off of Eno's first record. It's pretty cool, a little bit different from the studio version. And they actually do a pretty cool version of Tomorrow Never Knows for the Beatles. But basically, you know, if you're familiar with that mid-'70s and late '70s era of Eno when he was doing a little bit of vocals, if you like that, you're going to probably like this. Next, another fairly obscure psych band from the '60s, Beacon Street Union. I have the first one, and just got this one. And I think that they've only had 2. Clown Died in Marvin Gardens. The first one's excellent. You know, fairly, you know, typical psych from the '68, '69 era. But if you're into that stuff, this is definitely worth listening. Again, I'm not recommending this necessarily because I haven't heard this yet, but I'm going to guess it is probably relatively similar to the first one, which I love. Another one that's fairly rare, I think it's gotten reissued, but this is an original pressing, is Tom Waits' Frank's Wild Years. This is the first Tom Waits album I ever had. Of course, it was on CD at the time. I shouldn't say of course, but this came out in '87. So I'd be curious to know how many copies were pressed on vinyl. You know, because in '87 that was the heyday of when CDs were really just kind of getting their footing. It was really it was CDs and tapes. But yeah, this is one of my favorite Tom Waits albums. It's right after Rain Dogs and Fishbone Trust or Swordfish Trombone. I don't know why I'm brain farting. The first trio of albums when he kind of transferred from the Lounge Lizard kind of piano era of his to the experimental era, which he's been doing for the last 25 years. But like I said, this is an original pressing. It's in pretty good shape, and it's a gatefold. I don't know if the new one's gatefold as well. I've got the lyrics here. Next is Metallica's Kill 'Em All. This is the repressing, the 45 Speedmaster by Mobile Fidelity. And I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed because I picked this up at a store. You know, sometimes when you look at a record, you know, I'm not going to pull it out yet, but right now, but if you don't, sometimes you can get fooled pretty easily. I mean, it looked pretty good, and you know, from the condition of the outside, it's still in shrink, and it's a, you know, I assume this pressing only came out a few years ago, so you'd figure whoever got it would be, you know, of a different era. So I mean, when people were buying records back in the 60s and 70s, you know, a lot of people probably weren't really taking care of them in a collector's mentality, so they might have been throwing them around or whatever. But this is something that was put out in the last couple of years. Long story short, even though I glanced at it and it looked like it was in great shape, I played it and it's only in so-so shape. It's listenable, and you know, it's decent enough, but you know, for something that's like a special repressing, I want it to be, you know, near mint, and there's noise at the beginning and in between tracks, and on the quieter moments you can hear noise. So it was really disappointing because I paid $15 for it. So I have half a mind to actually contact the store. I was on vacation in Florida, so it's across the country for me, but I don't know, I probably won't bother. I'll just keep this and maybe eventually get another copy. Lastly, again, I'm zigzagging all over here. This is just something I got in the mail a couple days ago. It's Suzanne Vega. This is, I believe, her first record from 1985, and I had nothing by her, not even on CD, and I've always liked her when I've heard her stuff on radio, so I thought I'd give it a try, and I listened to it last night and like it. It's good. So that's it for that batch. So I'm going to do a tour again of my room once I get all my stuff, all these records actually filed up and make the room neat. I've gotten another shelf, so I can show you guys my expanding collection. So anyway, see you next time.